guys. Welcome to the fifth session, residency interviews. We have a really good panel put together for you today, and really excited to share some insight into the residency interviews and what you can do to try to boost yourself on interview day. And we'll talk about some other things leading up to interview day and applications. So just a little background. Fracture Fridays is a little video that's put out in collaboration with the MSOS that has topics on orthopedics, bite-sized imaging, and videos from some of the leaders in orthopedic trauma talking about topics that may be helpful on your away rotations as well as at home, as well as in residency. So make sure to follow along on Instagram or any other social media you have for these fun videos. AO North America, if you'd like to become a member, there's a ton of opportunities, a ton of meetings, ton of people that can improve your knowledge and improve your skills, as well as open up your doors to orthopedics. So consider becoming a member today. AO Link is a year-long webinar-based series to help medical students with their musculoskeletal knowledge and education. We do hour-long videos once a month that are focused on topics that medical students may or may not get in their medical school training to help them improve their knowledge for musculoskeletal disease and away rotations is at home. We'd like to thank our AO North America leadership, Dr. Lee, Dr. Kapatkin, Dr. Aker, who's the AO North America Link founder, for their support in this adventure. We're super glad that they think that this is something that is worthwhile to help educate you as medical students. And we'll have Dr. Aker on today for a lively panel discussion. So Dr. Marchand and I are your faculty. We do this every month. And then we have some guest faculty, including Taylor Young, who's the past chair of the AO Link committee, as well as our guest faculty, Dr. Dave Rothberg from the University of Utah. And we really appreciate him taking his time out of his busy day to be here. Here are some financial disclosures. Upcoming sessions today, again, is our residency interview session, and then we have 5 more after this. The AO Milestones is another online learning venture to help improve your knowledge of surgical skills as well as anatomy. So consider doing this to make your surgical pathway more proficient. So this more than ever today is important. So any of you that have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. We'll have someone monitoring this throughout the session. We will try to get to all of the questions that are answered or that are asked. But this will drive a lot of discussion. So if you have any question, please ask it. It's really important that you guys do that for this session. There is a chat box that's for the faculty and staff. Earn your merit badge. Watch the Zoom link and get a Credly badge. And if you do see all 10 sessions, you'll get a final merit badge and potentially more. So let's get to our session, the residency interview sessions. So our learning objectives today, and mostly through a panel discussion, will be how to prepare, how to present yourself in good light, and what to avoid on interview day. So I have to tell you that everything in this presentation and everything we talk about on this panel is discussed because someone has likely done it. That can be good or bad, but there is a medical student that we have run across that has done this, which is why we're giving you advice based on this. So it may seem dumb, but just keep in mind that this has been done. So there's 3 phases of preparation in my mind. There's the logistics of preparing for the interview day. There's preparing yourself for your application, and then preparing for the medical school and residency that you're interviewing at. Preparation for logistics. Double check your flights before and after you purchase them. Make sure that you're going from the airport that you thought you bought it from. If you have 2 airports in your city, don't go to Bush and realize you're flying out a hobby and miss your flight. These are all things that are important to do prior to an hour before your flight. Give yourself a lot of time. This is not the attempt to make the world record of a 15-minute layover in O'Hare. It's not going to happen. So make sure you have a lot of time between your flights and what you're trying to do. Pack an hour before the flight. Don't come home late from from an away rotation and try and pack real quickly or right before the flight before you leave. You will forget something. You may go to the Mayo Clinic and forget a tie. These are all real experiences that maybe someone has experienced, and so this is something I would like you guys to avoid. And then make sure you're going through the day before, or 2 days before on a map, making sure you know the address where you're supposed to show up. You know what floor you're supposed to go to. You've looked at all the details. So the day of the interview, when you're a little bit nervous, you're not trying to also search through your emails to see where it was and what floor is it. Oh, I'm at the wrong hospital or something like that. So just make sure you have all the information the night before. Preparing for your CV. Don't put anything on your CV you can't talk about. This is a little bit late for the MS4s here in the room, but you will likely be asked about something on your CV that was in the remote past. So just make sure you can talk about it. Don't put anything on there that you don't know. And if you do have something that was in the remote past, make sure you look it up before you go on your interviews. Read your CV the night before. This is more important at the early interviews as opposed to late interviews. Just make sure you know what's on there. Make sure you know what your personal statement said. Make sure you know what all the details of your research projects are. They don't have to be advanced knowledge of research projects. They don't have to have the exact statistical methods for a paper that was published 10 years ago, but at least something that is relevant to the study of what you did and what you found. So the interview day, there's the interview, there's the residents, the staff, and the social. So the interview, have a general idea of what each interviewer's subspecialty is or their interests are. It's not always well received if you ask the trauma surgeon what kind of hand procedures they do, or if you know and can look up and easily find some of their interests if you know, ask them something way off base. Answer all the questions honestly. Obviously, never be lie or be dishonest, but make sure you're just being very honest. And if you don't know the answer and you don't know your research project, just say what you know, and then say I don't remember, I don't know, but don't try to make something up. A heartfelt but well-rehearsed answer for the common questions. Just have something in mind that you have to say for each question, and make sure it's heartfelt, but you don't want to bumble over yourself when you're trying to answer these common questions that you'll likely get at every interview. And just make sure you're being appropriate. Common questions. Tell me about yourself. Why do you want to do orthopedics? Why do you want to train here? Tell me about a time you led, failed, had to be dishonest, you were led astray. All sorts of little scenarios that people are trying to get to know how you react to difficult situations. And what would you do if you didn't do orthopedics? These are all common questions. Lucas, you got any other questions you commonly ask or have heard on your interview trails through your thousands of trainings?
I have a lot of common questions, but I usually rotate them on a yearly basis, but I try to ask something that is honestly a little off script here or not commonly asked by others in an effort to really get people to be honest and give me those non-rehearsed answers. But the reason I'm asking those questions honestly, Pat, is to kind of see how somebody tolerates them, but also wanted to highlight the point that you brought up earlier about this idea of being honest. We all want to portray ourselves in the best light, and there are times where people maybe stretch what they're saying. And I think the reason that you really need to be honest and just genuine in your interview is because it's an opportunity for the program to really get to know you and for you to get to know the program to see if that's a fit. And if any part of that interaction is manufactured or fake, it leads to a situation where you don't know if that partnership is really going to work. And so I thought that was something you brought up, Pat, that I kind of made a note of down here that I think is critically important is just an honest and genuine representation of yourself to allow the program to see if you're going to excel in their culture.
One thing I
Or
might add in your preparation, as you talked about getting a sense of who your interviewers are, right? Like there's a lot of time where you're just kind of talking to people, right? You want to be able to talk about things. And so looking where people trained, maybe where they're from. It may say that on the faculty bios on the website and sort of capitalizing on some of those commonalities so that you can talk about things you have shared experience over. I think that's something that can't be understated in terms of generating kind of free conversation that keeps things moving in the discussions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Taylor, that there are sometimes these down times that you can fill in slightly and make the conversation a little bit more fluid, as opposed to these hard stops and 30 seconds of deafening silence.
Can you go back to that slide really quick, Pat? Because I'd like to take a moment to ask Dr. Rothberg and Aker how they expect an interviewee to respond to the question, tell me about yourself. Because to me, this is the simplest question we ask. And in my opinion, the question I get the worst answers on all of the time. So what would you say, tell me about yourself. What do you expect to hear? Start with Rothberg and then get Aker to chime in.
Well, I'd say the most common thing that you hear is they just start telling you where they went to school and training that they had. And I think what we're all looking for is something to create a personal touch with. So telling about your interests, your family, where you grew up, something where you can create those links so that there's something else to talk about where you feel like someone's a real person and you know where they're coming from.
Dr. Aker, anything to add what you're looking for in that question?
Yeah, I think ultimately, it's a broad question. It's what a lot of folks open the interview with. On an interview day, it's going to be exhausting for both parties, but you may have to rotate through 10 different rooms with 10 different sets of surgeons, PAs, residents, and a lot of times you're going to get as an icebreaker. So I flipped through your application, I read your personal statement, but never mind all that. Like, tell me about yourself. And that's sort of your 2 to 4 minutes. That's your elevator pitch. That is why I'm here, why I'm going to crush it. Um, to Rothberg's point, I don't know that I really need to be reminded of where you went to undergrad and that you were all state pitcher in high school at a 1A school. More about like more recently, what events led you to this seat right here? And then in many ways, um, that answer might make or break the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, because what I really like to hear is, everyone that was invited for an interview has a great CV. They have great scores. Well, we're all hardworking. I'm the first to arrive, the last to leave. I'm a team player. I'm coachable, blah, blah, blah. I mean, everybody, every single applicant, all 900 of you meet those criteria. I think what you need to do is look in the mirror and really reflect with a bit of insight on what makes you unique. What have you done up to this point to make you stand out amongst your peers? And that's not to belittle what all your peers have done, but you specifically are probably an outstanding applicant, and that's why you were invited for an interview. Why? What makes you unique? I shouldn't have to pull teeth to get you to explain why you're such a great applicant. These should be rehearsed, but they should also be free flowing and show that you have some respect for the process, that you're well prepared. These questions are coming. So, what have you done up till this point that sets you apart from your peers? That's basically when I ask that question. When I'm getting down into the nitty gritty, what I really want to hear back. It's the easiest and yet the hardest question, Patrick.
Love it.
Yeah,
I think,
I think
go
it
ahead.
is. And it is a common, there are so many common pitfalls with that question and with the next one on the slide, which is why I want to bring it up. Sorry for interrupting, Pat, but it's like,
Oh,
why do you
good.
want to do orthopedics? Because it's cool or because I liked it the most. Those are not reasons to do this job and to make all the sacrifices we make to take care of patients in the kind of the orthopedic surgery profession. So have an introspective sort of conversation with yourself and really get down to the nitty gritty about why you're doing this and putting yourself through this process.
Well, I'll say everyone had an injury growing up. Most everyone had an injury growing up. And that may have led you to pique your interest to coming to orthopedics in medical school, but hopefully not the only reason you want to do orthopedics going forward. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. Taylor, is that a hot take?
Uh, maybe not. I have a hot take though. I'm curious what people's thoughts and this just kind of came to me like right in this moment, but as applicants it's probably too early for it. I'm not sure I've seen it before, but uh do you feel like you've ever encountered people who have crafted responses that are so rehearsed and actually aided through like ChatGPT or something like that? And how would you react, do you think?
I don't know that I have encountered that feeling yet, that that they were so rehearsed that it didn't resonate, particularly to the tell me about yourself type of thing. And the one thing I would say, kind of going backwards a little bit, the why do you want to do orthopedics? This should not be a difficult question because you should have thought about this multiple times before making this decision. But yeah, to your point, Taylor, I don't know that I have really experienced that in a way that felt off-putting.
The flip side along those lines, Taylor, a question that I often hear, and it's sometimes as the interview is winding down, you get a knock on the door and you say, okay, we got 2 minutes left. Like, well, okay, do you have enough about like you? Like, what about us? Do you have any questions for us? It's a small deal, but it is a pet peeve of many that when the applicant immediately pulls out their phone and has to refer to their notes to recall a question or use the excuse, well, I already asked a bunch of my questions, so I'm going to find one of my questions that I haven't asked yet, things like that. I mean, these should be, you should be prepared to query the faculty, query the residents on something unique. And anyways, I'll just leave it at that. And I know it's a new generation where people take notes on their phones, and that's fine. But I mean, you only get a couple minutes to make an impression on these interviews. And if you got to flip through your phone to find your questions, come on, man.
Come on, man. All right. The residents and staff, this is they certainly can help you, and there's fan favorites of the residents, but residents and staff can most often hurt you. So just be aware that these folks are here to answer your questions and to make sure everything runs smoothly. The staff are there they're doing a ton of work on the back end. They're coordinating a ton of interviews. There's probably 2 interview days, if not 3. They're also probably doing fellowship interviews. They're working on the attending schedules. They have other jobs. So they're doing a ton of work. So they're there to make sure the day is running smooth and answer questions, but they're not your personal assistants. And so just make sure you're being appropriate when you're asking for the staff that's there. Ask questions that you really want to know, kind of Dr. Akers' point. Don't, if you had to look it up on your phone, it might not be a question you really care about the answer, but make sure you're thinking about what you really want to know about a program before you go there. And then I found this really helpful, and I want to talk to the panel about this, but I found that the tour was one of the most helpful parts, not because I cared about what the break room looked like or whether there were hospital beds in the ER or whether the splint material was close to the ortho casting room or whatever it was. But I felt like you could get a real sense of the residents leading you on a tour of how they interacted with other people. You would oftentimes see them run into people, and if they had a very jovial feel and they were saying hi, but and getting along with other people and the hospital, nurses, residents, other staff when they saw them, or was it very kind of strict tour? They didn't really talk to anybody. People kind of avoided it. You could get a really good sense of how the program was and how the residents felt. Certainly, that's a little dependent. They're hopefully going to pick the residents that like the program to lead the tour, but I found that helpful. Are there any other soft clues that you guys have found on the interview day that can clue the medical students into what they may or may not want out of a program?
I think to your point, Patrick, about this last one, just to give the crowd. So I'm the residency director at the University of Utah, and I choose who interviews on our panels. And in addition to your thinking about how the residents are interacting and the type of people they are and how you might interact with those people, are they your people? I think as I'm picking my interview panel, that I am most likely to get people recruited to my program who are like the people on my panel. And so if I have sort of a type of personality or something that I think is going to be successful at my program or the kind of people I want representing us, I try and pick panelists who are like that as well. So if you get a sense that the residents that you're rotating with are not the kind of people that you would maybe choose as your friend group, or the way that they interact with each other is negative, most likely that is reflective of the staff as well. So I think that that cannot be understated, that you have to have a feeling about the people that you're around on this interview day, whether it's the residents, the staff, the faculty, because that's the environment you're going to live in for 5 years.
Perfect. The social, I would say make an attempt to go to the social. It can give you some more of these soft clues about the program. You can answer and ask questions that you may or may not have felt comfortable in a formal setting of a more informal setting. Use it to learn a lot about the program, who shows up or who doesn't. Some of these soft clues. And just remember, it's not a party. It's not the opportunity for you to enjoy yourself like you were in college. So avoid dishonesty. We're going to get into this. Avoid not knowing yourself. Avoid drunken behavior, and don't be mean, dismissive, demanding, or towards the staff. These are all pretty simple ground rules of life. These could go anywhere in the operating room, at home, on the interview day, but these are pretty good life lessons to know. Obviously, I wouldn't expect any of you guys to have this, but just something that we like to say. So the panel,
Probably, Patrick, real quick, if you just go back a slide, probably a pretty common one that we see almost every interview day is somebody who's late. So maybe Rothberg, you're up at the podium and you're about to start at 7 a.m. sharp, and a couple people come strolling in at 7:05. Like everyone has delayed flights, etc. But what's your take? Are they immediately like red line crossed off the list, or can they recover if they show up late?
I think I'm someone that always is going to give people the opportunity to recover in this setting, because you understand that you may not know why they're late. But I will say it is absolutely something I notice. And the first thing that comes to my mind is if you're late for interview day, you're going to be late for rounds, you're going to be late for the OR, and you're going to be late for clinic and whatever else, might come in residency. So it is definitely a no-no.
Perfect. I think that's a great one. I did miss that. So don't be late. That's for life as well. So the panel that I so really didn't introduce at the beginning as well is Dr. Marchand, who has been a staple on the residency interview committee at the University of Utah for many years now. He actually was the resident who interviewed me when I was a medical student. And so he's had a lot of experience interviewing for residents at the University of Utah. Dr. Yong is at El Paso. He also has his own residency program. He's been quickly rising out there and is an integral part to the residency interview committee and has a lot of experience doing that. Dr. Aker is director of the fellowship, Orthopedic Trauma Fellowship at the University of Texas, Houston. Has been running those interviews for years and I can tell you from the inside, does a spectacular job of reading applications and understanding applicants. And so he's got a great breadth of knowledge. And then Dr. Rothberg, as he mentioned, is the program director at University of Utah for residency and has been interviewing for residents for a long period of time. And then myself, who has the least amount of experience, so I'll be kind of tossing the questions out. So Dr. Rothberg, what is the easiest way that an applicant can rise up in your mind on the interview day? Their applications are very good. They're very similar to some other people, but what is something they can do that really sets them apart in your mind during interview day?
I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of outside of the actual interviews that you notice. I definitely touch base with all of our admin assistants as they're working with these people. Who did you like and who did you not like and why? I'm looking for people who are helpful. You go to these like welcome dinner type things. And at Utah, this is usually at a faculty's house. And sometimes you'll see people helping clean up or talking to faculty spouses or kind of going the extra mile just to be very nice people. So I'm always looking for those kinds of clues outside of the actual interview day to see people who are rising. Because ultimately, I think that 99% of the people that we're interviewing can be very good at this job. But what seems like maybe not everybody is able to pull off is doing it in a way that builds your program through their social interactions. So that's a lot of what I'm looking for.
Dr. Aker, anything else that you can think of that really makes people stand out on interview day? And I'll take this opportunity to also remind everybody who's attending tonight to feel free to pop in some questions in the QA, because this is a portion of the lecture tonight where we'd be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Oh, thanks, Lucas. Yeah, I'm similar to what Dr. Rothberg had mentioned. I like the idea of these nonverbal cues and, are the applicants comfortable with one another at the social? Are they interacting? Are they engaged with others? Are they talking to their peers? Are they hanging out? I mean, this is going to be your family for the next 5 years, and we are going to spend probably more time with you than we do our spouses. So this is a two-way street of an interview here. But I like applicants who are happy, who wear their hearts on their sleeve, but hopefully they're smiling for most of the interview. Nobody wants a grumpy resident that when they answer the page from the nurse, they're like mad and like orthopedics, like grumpy. Remember, like you wanted this. Remember when 2 years ago you would have done anything to get into orthopedics, and now you're grumpy and mad that someone didn't put in the Tylenol order correctly. I mean, come on. So I like happy residents. I like personable residents. I like hardworking folks and all the rest of that stuff. But man, I gotta like you. We gotta get along. We have to get along. So I think a lot of the nonverbal cues and the body language goes a very long way for me during the formal interview, but also during the lunch, during the social, during the tour, all those opportunities where there's moles everywhere. The walls have ears, as they say, and eyes. So they're listening. We're seeing. We're watching what you're doing. For a lot of the applicants, their interview might already be a formality because they've already been on a 30-day interview during their rotation. So all of this stuff is already known by many of the faculty, staff, and residents. But what better opportunity to showcase it all over again during your interview?
I think that's
Go
an
ahead.
excellent point too. Like you bring up away rotators, and sometimes I remember going on a few and being like, there were some people who were like just so chummy with the residents, and you'd be like, dude, I don't even have a shot now. Like, look at that guy. He's just
Yeah,
like,
that's real.
eh, almost too much though. Some of the time, like there is a boundary there where if you're too chummy, it's a little bit, it's a little bit overstepping. But on
It's a
some
fine line.
I wouldn't get intimidated by that if you aren't a rotator, right? You still got to bring your A game. And I think like Dr. Aker says, you have to bring a lot of, positivity with a smile, with a good handshake, that sort of thing. But it's really, you want to project like a good energy, right? Like you want to have a good vibe. Like you have to be like present, right? You have to, and it's tiring at the end of the day if you're putting forward this much energy and personality, but that's what it takes to kind of be committed and show that you're genuinely interested and really engaged.
I have an interesting question for all four of y'all, because I think all four of y'all do a lot of residency interviews. Can a rotating medical student that is kind of locked, guaranteed to match based on their performance, do something so egregious? I think there's like the egregious things, but is there like a mailing it in during the interview of that's too much and you say, we don't want this person, maybe they're not who we thought they were?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
the short answer is yes, Pat, and then we'll let Dave go. I'm sorry.
no, go
Yeah,
ahead, Lucas.
and it really gets back to what Taylor was saying, which is you show up to the interview and you crushed your way, you probably know it. But if you come and you show up and you're too comfortable and you're across that fine line that Tim was just talking about, you come across that is a poor representation of yourself and it could really hurt your chances. Like you still have to show up and bring your A game. So there's always something you can do, I think, to portray yourself in a bad light that even if you did great for 30 days, may have the panel of interviewers questioning whether or not you're the right fit.
Yeah, most commonly, if you crushed your sub-I, it's because you acted like you wanted it. so badly the whole time, that you were continuing to earn it the whole time. And when you show up to your interview and you act as if you already have it, that's the major death nail in this situation. And we see that every single year. So, sure. And that's kind of like the common thing you see outside of things that show a lack of integrity or something else like that. But
We had a memorable story at our program. Gosh, it was probably a decade ago, but it was at the social, and there was an applicant who was just what y'all described, very, very chummy, and he got very friendly with the residents and almost like he was in the club, even though he wasn't. And he got drunk at the social, and one of the residents encouraged him to head home in a taxi. I don't even know if Uber was a thing back then, and ended up taking a swing at the resident, like, get off me, man. And it was bad. And needless to say, that resident who was, in fact, or that applicant who was ranked to match, ended up crossed off the list. It's amazing how you can work so hard for this moment, just in a moment of weakness, despair, drunkenness, act a fool, and it's over. Game changer.
Yeah, you may have to watch the altitude when you go interview in Utah.
Don't worry,
If you're
they
coming
water
from Houston.
they water the beers down for you, so it's like,
Oh,
it's
that's true. That's true. That's a good point.
So
Well,
uh,
like 4%, right?
so go ahead.
Oh, one thing I just wanted to bring up is I'm like one of these people that through these conversations and stuff, I want to highlight things and like emphasize the good advice I think you're getting. Is when Pat asked the panel, like, what can really move you up the list? Um, Dave, Tim, and Taylor all mentioned things that are not on your CV. So that's number one. Your CV has got you to the spot. Now you need to represent yourself. And the words I heard used were happy, kind, and positive. So show up to your interview and don't be an Eeyore. And that seems like common sense, but the number of people that are so reserved during the interview and almost guarded and protected because they're worried about saying the wrong thing, that really handicaps you and your ability to express who you are and give everybody a sense of that inner person. And maybe that is your personality, and I would not encourage you to be dishonest about your personality. But if you are a person who is happy and kind and positive, which I'm to be successful to get to this point, many of you are, I would encourage you to express that during your interview because those are the things that you just heard the faculty with a lot of experience want to see and hear from people.
All right, we have a couple questions here in the QA, and thank you guys for getting to these. And I know someone submitted some QA questions. We'll get to those too, so stay tuned. But how do you all recommend showcasing your personality and work ethic in an interview at a school you didn't do an away rotation?
I think
I mean,
the personality side is going to be somewhat, natural. Just be yourself, uh, enjoy the interview. And I think to Lucas's point, like it's sort of a managing your anxiety that you have about how hard this path is and the reality that the chances are only 70 to 75% that you match. Like that, you got to get that out of your head so that you can, portray yourself as who you are. Um,
I
what
don't
was
think
this?
that I don't think the medical students are going to get anything else out of their head than that number you just told them.
I mean, that's the difficult part of this is that there is some realities that this is a hard path, going to the match. What was the second part of your question, Pat?
Basically, just how do you showcase your work ethic?
Yeah.
And same kind of thing at a school you didn't rotate or a residency you didn't interview or rotate at.
One of the things that I think about as someone who's asking questions is that I think a lot about when I ask somebody a question, is there a answer that leads me to some endpoint? And so if I'm trying to figure out if someone has grit or work ethic, I'm not going to ask you that directly, but I'm going to come up with some kind of a question that is going to lead me in whether it's a scenario or something more direct towards interpreting your answers as someone who has work ethic or grit or something like that. So I think as you think about your answers to questions, having a lot of insight from prior thought about how you want to represent yourself is more important than if you just tell me, I'm going to show up early, I'm going to stay late, I'm going to be your hardest working resident. That's too easy to say, and it doesn't mean a whole lot to any of us. We already assumed that you would answer that. So thinking about how you answer other questions in a way that is going to show your determination, work ethic, and grit is probably the way that you can best portray that.
I think to Rothberg's point, that you have to find a way, if you didn't rotate there and you really want to showcase your talents, you have to find a way to answer the questions in a thoughtful way that keeps the conversation going. And you don't want to give a 12-minute run on monologue answer to a single question, but be wise about it. And this is all in the preparation. You have to find a way to, when they ask you a yes no question, it's not a one-word answer. And we've all been in those interviews where, so tell me, what was the best orthopedic case that you did on your rotation while you were at Georgetown? uh Probably a femoral nail with Dr. Smith. uh okay. Well, then now, do I have to state the obvious? Well, tell us about that. Why was it your favorite? What is it? Was it Dr. Smith, or was it the case? Was it the, what do you remember about that case? What did you learn about it? These are all, these pathways, these tentacles that you could go down, that you can just keep talking about what you learned and why Dr. Smith was such a great mentor on that rotation, why they are such a great surgeon, and it's the first nail you ever put in and you'll never forget it, and here's why. I mean, there's so many pathways to go down that could show your excitement, your engagement, your personality if you didn't rotate there. But you have to be willing to share. You can't just be a closed book or a nut that we're trying to crack. You got to be able, we're trying to get to know you as well as you are with us. So you got to be willing to share.
I think you make a really good point about the idea of sharing. And I'm gonna make a little bit of a plug for, I did the AOA Apex leadership thing, and one of the modules was on storytelling. And it sounds like a little touchy-feely, right? Like we're telling stories to our kids at night or something, right? And so, but really, it was one of the things that resonated with me the most, and that honestly made me think of somebody like Dr. Rout. When Dr. Rout presents a case, he's really just a phenomenal storyteller, right? And you can remember, I can remember his case presentations just from the stories alone, right? Like the mafioso and having to wear the cement shoes and all those things, right? And so all of you have stories from your life. And so what I would encourage you to do is to dive in and reflect and think about those experiences that set you apart, and think about the stories that help you tell how those experiences have shaped who you are, and get to those endpoints that Dr. Rothberg mentions in terms of what your work ethic is like and how this trial was sort of something you grew from, and really capitalize on those experiences in the format of a story that's abridged for an interview format. And it does sound like a little disingenuous that you're like capitalizing on your stories or whatever, but that's how you encompass the experiences of your life in a way, I would say.
That was deep. That was deep, but super helpful. I think that's one of those things that Acre was saying. Is if you ask a question about what was your favorite case, and you can loop this into a story about yourself and your work ethic kind of thing, but without what we're going to get to the next question of coming off too cocky or anything. It's that's a great way to someone will pique their interest and want to know more about you. Dr. Marchand, are you the PTSD from hearing about Dr. Rout as a medical student? You're doing okay?
I'm hanging in there. I remember a lot of his stories and also him asking me a lot of questions.
Um, All right, panel, how can applicants navigate the fine line of humility and confidence during way rotations and interviews? What is the best way for someone to come off as confident but not cocky?
It's a tough one.
Yeah, yeah, I think that one's challenging. And a lot of it is sort of your general approach to the concept of, are things happening for me or am I doing things for others? So first of all, being humble is almost never a problem. And I'm not entirely sure that I think there's a line between humble and confidence. A lot of the confidence that comes out is going to be in the way that you present yourself. Um, but I think the idea of things happening for me or yourself, providing for others is really an important idea here. And I think a lot of interviewers are looking to decide, as I ask questions or I present scenarios, does this person seem like their answers are focused on what else is happening to them or what other people can do for them? Or is it the opposite? And I think that's an important thing to think about as well, that sort of encompasses humility and confidence.
Maybe one thing I might add, I guess, is like, if you're being sincere, uh, and I think that comes off, right? Like, if you're being sincere, then I think it helps bridge that gap a little bit, maybe. And I mean, like, I just had an interview with our Office of Sponsored Projects here, and I sort of like ripped them. I'm like, but at the end of the day, I want this to be better for the institution. So the institution is moving forward. And I think that helped, in that setting, um, bridge like a challenging discussion. And if you're walking a fine line in scenarios that are somewhat similar but not quite, I think as long as you're being sincere, then I think that that does help on some level. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm reaching to find an answer for the hard question.
No, I think it's good. The next question is very similar to that is how do you come across or how do you come across as not too dramatic or cocky about the challenges you've had along your journey to orthopedics? But I think we've kind of answered this a little bit of confidence is just knowing your story. And I think I'd like to highlight like what Dr. Marchand was doing. What Dr. Rothberg said about like, am I doing things for myself or am I doing things for other people? And if you present the story, hopefully, because it's what the story is and who you are as a person, that your challenges have made you a better person, that you because someone in your life took you under your wing and guided you, and that's kind of what's led you to guide other medical students, or you can talk about challenges that way to make it seem as you are giving back and what are you doing for other people is really important to come off as in your answers. But I want to make sure I'm not coming off as you need to manipulate your answers so it looks like you're doing something for others. Hopefully this is the true story. This isn't making it up. You really are trying to help people as opposed to doing things for yourself.
Yeah, I think if you're trying to avoid being too dramatic about it, don't be dramatic about it. The not more complicated than that. Like, just a real world example. Um, I was a first generation college student in my family, and I worked throughout college to make money and pay for my schooling, and then moved on to medical school. Versus, I was the first person in my family that went to college, and I barely got in, but then I got in and I had a job. And I worked every night after school from 6 p.m. to midnight. And then I woke up at 4 a.m. to study for my classes. And then I went to classes from 8 a.m. to noon. And then all I could do was just get enough food in myself to have the energy to go back to work at 6 p.m. and work to midnight and rinse and repeat. Like, those two scenarios say the same thing. One's overly dramatic and one is matter of fact about what you did. So just be more matter of fact about it. And I'd like to use this as a segue to asking the rest of the panelists a question, which I think is not a common pitfall, but happens at least once a year when I'm interviewing people. And that is to ask you all about dress code. dress code for a professional interview. Is there one? And if so, what is it?
So I would say, like, those who know me know that I'm the wrong guy to answer a question like this. Because, like, this is my fancy shirt that I'm wearing now. Like, this is as good as it gets. But you always err on the side of being more professional than less. And I think, at least for these interviews, this is fairly straightforward. This is a shirt and tie and coat if you're a guy, and some sort of suit for the women. And you don't want to be flashy in a way that's showing skin, and, just be conservative about it, whether that is you or is not you. Like, anyone sees me in a suit and they know I'm uncomfortable, and that is not my usual. Um, but I'm going to do it in certain settings because I don't want that to be something that I am judged by, and I think that's the way you should think about this.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is going to think poorly upon you because you showed up in a suit, or for the females a pantsuit or a formal dress kind of thing for an interview. I don't think anyone's gonna get mad about that. And it turns out all the attendings that you're interviewing with are in scrubs or in Rothberg fancy shirts. That if you're wearing a suit, they just assume that you're respectful of the program and that you wanted to appear professional. And so I would say just go with a suit, pantsuit, whatever, formal. Okay. What how should medical students ask questions to get a better sense of the culture and or the type of residents that do well at that program? Are there anything that they medical students are missing, and a good question that can kind of clue them into would they be a good fit?
I would say, first of all, that I think the question of what kind of residents do well at your program is a bit of a trap. I'm not sure that I love that question. I get asked it a lot, but, it's kind of like, what do you mean? What kind of resident does well at my program? Someone who works hard and studies and prepares and, gives it their all. Like, that's a pretty straightforward thing. And I'm not sure that you're gonna learn a whole lot from that question. But if you're trying to figure out a little bit about the faculty, the culture of the program, you can ask things that get people talking about it. So you could ask me, why are you at why did you take a job at the University of Utah? Or what do you love about your program? Or what are you most proud of? That might be a way to get at that first trap question. What are you most proud of with your residents? Or what are what kind of expectations do you have over their careers? Or, something along those lines that are open-ended, get them talking about their program. I mean, the reality is most of us want to talk about our program and how great it is. And so trying to get people talking about that is going to give you a sense of it. If you ask faculty why they're at a place and they don't have the ability to tell you how amazing it is and why they love it, that's kind of a red flag for you.
I always told the medical students when I was in resident and I was sitting in the room that every program has problems. There is not a single program that you will go to that doesn't have problems or downsides or something that people say, this would be something that would be better. And I don't mind the question to residents, what's one thing you would change about this program? If you could. And I think that most residents will be pretty honest with you. And that's a fairly good way to get into the minds of the residents about what they don't like. And then remember what the things were that they thought were not the best, and try to find the program where you don't care about the things that are bad at that program. So you need to match your, and this is a little bit of where to choose kind of thing, but you need to match the things you don't care about with the program that has some downsides in that part. So if you really care about front loading or call, you want one person on call, you want a lot of weekends off, you want to just the pain needs to be pain. Then don't go to a place that has, 5 residents on call for spine and hand, and then there's a senior and a junior. Like that's not, you're not going to be happy there. So I think that's another question for finding out kind of who would succeed there is what are some downsides, and is that something that's really important to you? That's the downside of that program.
And this is sort of like a really like probably a smaller thing, but perhaps is something that I think I didn't think about as much as an applicant, or maybe applicants aren't thinking of, but to get a sense of what the clinical experience is like from an objective sense and numbers wise, it may be useful to know, like at least for me, I went to a residency where we saw a little bit fewer consults than some others that but what's the number of consults a resident typically sees in a night, or what's the sort of case a resident can essentially do on their own at PGY2 or PGY4 at your institution or something like that, I think may give you an objective sense of what the clinical experience is like. And you may not have been thinking of that necessarily, because I certainly wasn't myself.
Um, I'm gonna segue into just a couple questions. We're getting a little late on time, so I want to make sure we got these because these were sent in earlier. Dr. Rothberg, you've been program director for a while. In terms of research on a application, do you care about quality or do you care about quantity, or how do you differentiate between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certain kind of like bottom line. Like when I am evaluating applications, I want to see that you've had some first authorship publications. It tells me a couple things. One, you actually had some interest in the research that you're doing, so much so that you led a project. Two, it tells me that you're a finisher. You can start and finish a project. Um, I think quality is really somewhat subjective, and I don't worry as much about whether you did a randomized controlled trial over 4 years or if you just did, a retrospective review. I think both kind of show me that you had the ability to finish a project. I am not a huge quantity person. I want to see that you've had these experiences. But I don't necessarily look at someone who's got 80 publications and think that they are going to be a better resident than someone with 10 publications. That is definitely, there's personal bias. But I'll say to the kind of the people applying, um, different programs are going to have different expectations, and you can get a sense of that based on the program's reputation for research. And you got to know yourself. It's sort of become a hurdle that everybody has to jump over to be able to apply to orthopedics, and probably the thing that has changed the most over the last 10 to 20 years. So if you're someone that doesn't love that process, then you should probably not be trying to go to a program that's going to be something that they value, because you will be tortured into doing that and it's not going to make your experience great. But that's kind of how I think about it. I want to see a couple first author publications to see that someone can finish something.
We just got another question in the QA box that I think is a great question that I'd love to hear the panel's answer to. And the question was from Erica Randazzo. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. I just wanted to shout out because I thought this was an excellent question. What advice would you give to applicants when talking about aspects of their life that imply other large time demands? For example, young children. Dave, I'm going to toss this question to you. I think it's a great question. And then I'd also love to hear Tim's answer to this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the probably the most straightforward way to kind of figure out whether what you have going on in life is going to work at this program is both in your interviews and when talking to residents, find out who's at that program. If you're someone who has a family and you're going to a program where all the residents are single and partying on the weekends, that's probably not going to fit with who you are and what the program's expectations are. But if you notice that the residents at that program have families, like our program, many of our residents have families. I think that that is a place that you probably are going to fit in well. And I think it's, while you're not going to be asked these questions about your life, or shouldn't be because they are illegal questions, you can certainly ask them of the residents. And I think you're probably going to get better answers from them about how your life will fit in within that program. You know, and you can ask some specific things like, oh, you have kids. Well, how much time do you get to spend with them? Or what does your spouse do and how does it work? And those are important things for you to figure out program fit, um, and probably better coming from the residents and your observations of the people that are at that program.
Yeah, I think that for someone who is taking the plunge to apply for any residency, but especially a surgical subspecialty, they've obviously put a lot of thought into the time commitment required. It's no secret that there is an 80-hour work week, but 80 hours is a lot. It's a lot of time. But similar to what Dave said, once upon a time when I was a resident, 0 residents in our program had families. And I think today, probably at least half our residents have kids, I think. Um, but it's a new day. And yeah, there are some rotations that are very labor intensive, very time intensive. And residents go home, including myself, exhausted at the end of some days. But that's a surgical residency. And so I think if you're going for it and you've decided that you want to be a part of this orthopedic surgery club, then obviously people have given this a lot of thought. But to Dave's point, there are programs that are very friendly to families. And um, I mean, most of our happy hours in our program have like little pipsqueaks and little kids running around and playing, and all the kids are friends and the spouses are friends. And it's a super fun place to be. But I think not all programs are like that. And so, yeah, while it may be an illegal question, I think the opposite is not illegal. It's not illegal for the applicants to query about what's it like for residents that have kids at this program, and do they have sitters? Is the salary enough to have a sitter or a nanny, or like how do y'all handle that? I mean, these are real life issues that you shouldn't be embarrassed to talk about.
Those are all great answers, and again, great question. And I think Acre's final point, kind of don't be embarrassed about again your life situation and or the answers that you want to get. It's important for you to succeed in the place that you're going to be in. A lot of the interview is finding out what these places are like and whether they're right for you. It's just as much as them finding out about you as you finding out about them. I'm going to leave one last question that I always think is interesting. It's maybe not the most thought-provoking question, but everyone on the panel, how do you guys feel about thank you emails after or thank you letters after the interview?
Yeah, I mean, I actually tell people in our interview, we do not expect this in any way. But every program is going to be a little different, and you will most likely catch that vibe from the other people you're interviewing with. But for me, I don't need a thank you letter. I don't need you to call any of that stuff, and we're not going to call you. We're going to keep it above board, and that's the way we do it at our program. And I find really no value in that.
I'll just quickly say that I've been doing this since 2009, interviewing residents, and I've gotten in that time probably hundreds of thank you emails, letters, notes, handwritten, etc. And it has influenced their position on the rank list a grand total of 0 times. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If you as a human feel compelled to write them, but you need to know that it doesn't impact your position or your standing at all.
I agree with you on that. I think, if you were raised to write thank you notes and it feels like something you should do because your parents, it would make your parents proud or something, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not going to change the position on the list or anything like that, right? Like if you rotated with everybody and you just want to say one last, formal thank you, I don't think there's a problem with it, but I don't think there's any expectation from any program, more or less, that would say like, we need to get a thank you, or, you're just not going to match here, sort of thing. And so I tend to agree with both.
Your presence at the interview and your thoughtful responses to my questions are thank you enough.
All right, everybody. I'd like to thank the panel a ton for taking time out of their busy day. This has been a super thoughtful and hopefully very educational session for you going forward. And even if you're not an MS4, hopefully you can use this going forward for your applications. We'll maybe have another session about building your application next year's special session. So thank you all for all your time. Remember, next December 11th, we're doing wound closures. We'll get back to some more clinical relevant information. And then one of the other questions, don't forget to, all of these sessions are recorded on YouTube. So we did research as a medical student. So that's a good session if you're trying to get involved as a younger medical student. There's some good tips from how to do more research. So thank you all.